Welcome to Three, a show about Federer, Nadal, and Djokovic, and part of the Tennis Channel podcast network. I'm Gill with Joel Drucker and Amy Lundy. Monte Carlo draw is here. Rafa Nadal on the sidelines, but Novak Djokovic is set to return in Monte Carlo on the clay. What an occasion. This feels like the real start of Novak's season. Dubai felt like a little bit of a false start. Amy, I mean, how do you feel coming in about what Novak's mindset probably is? Is this what his expectations will be and what the goal is coming into, again, what actually kind of feels like the start of his 2022?
Djokovic fans are going to want to downplay expectations and say, look, the guy has been off for a while. He missed two big Masters 1000 events. But I'm very bullish, if I'm being real about it, because I've seen members of the big three the past few years, and I've seen the good that can come out of some rest. And I also think that his mind is going to be more freed up because he's got this vaccination saga behind him. And he'll be able to play without being worried about any drama surrounding that. And his body will probably be healed from any little small injuries that he might have been battling. So I expect him to play very free. He's in, the town in which he lives part-time. So I actually am thinking he could legitimately win the tournament.
I agree. I like that. I think he's in it is really, like you said, Gil, it is really pretty much the start of his year. And that's unusual. I mean, he's probably thinking, I've never thought of that. I mean, for a tennis player to be pretty much starting in April, and it wasn't an injury, it wasn't some other thing, or it wasn't the pandemic of 2020. So I think he's going to be pretty fresh. I'll be curious, and we'll never know to the extent of what he's been doing in practice. Has he been playing sets? Does he drill? I mean, that's come mysterious things that the pros do. But I think he's going to be fairly ready. I mean, of course, we'll all look at it with a microscope. So the first time he makes two unforced errors in a game,
Right.
two errors in a game, well, oh my God, look at Novak. He seems a little rusty on that inside out forehand. Oh no.
We can talk about the draw, but here's what worries me. It's the weird, a tennis player finds motivation in what tournament is next, right? You want to train towards something, and that's why you put yourself through the suffering, because you're going towards a goal.
Again with the suffering.
Well, yes, again with the suffering, right? You put yourself through hard training to. Yes. I do question if Novak now needs to rev things up again, the competitive juices, because they have been kind of on the shelf for a while.
I think it's going to happen naturally because Nadal has had such a wonderful start to the season. And so that's going to motivate him. I mean, look, he's a highly competitive guy, but also the emergence of Carlos Alcaraz will motivate him to show that he's still got it, and that he's got skills on this surface that he's always trying to prove to people. He knows what he has to do. He's been here before. Players who play competitive matches, when you haven't played matches in a long time, you get out there and you think to yourself, oh gosh, I got to get back in this mindset. I'm not quite used to this. I feel nerves in certain situations. But then soon enough, you're back in it. And you really, I think with these guys, they've been through this so many times. It's like a muscle, or riding a bike, or like a mental routine, that after a couple of matches, he should be back in form. That's what I expect.
Yeah, but also goes in a little bit of a not exactly a roller coaster, but it's kind of these peaks and valleys and its opponents. And I think there's the the factor. If I was a contemporary tennis player, I'd rather be commencing it on hard courts. Hard courts, I think, has a much more, regardless of speed, has a more easier time of gaining that, because I think clay is its own third opponent.
I'd rather be on clay. I would much rather be on clay.
Let me make my point about it. Okay, this will be fun. Is I think the clay creates these variables of influenced by weather, more influenced by opponent. I think more influenced by opponent, unless you're playing like a Del Potro or someone with exceptional weaponry. But Novak's fine. Look, he's won this tournament twice. He hasn't won it in 7 years, but he's obviously very comfortable on this venue. But I think Clay adds its own other mix to things because the what it takes to win and to finish points. But I also agree with you, Amy, that yeah, he's a competitor. He'll regain his form, but we'll see. I mean, I'm curious to know what his whole Clay season looks like. Is he just going to play this one, Madrid, Rome, Roland-Garros, nice little Clay season? Will he take another wild card? What's he going to do? Who does he play?
I think how many Clay tournaments he chooses to play leading up to Roland-Garros will really determine how serious he is about winning that slam. And I suspect that he's very serious about it.
Why would he be anything but?
That being said, I would rather get back into match form on clay because it's a slower surface and you have more time. You have more time to perfect your technique and get back in your rhythm. I mean, some of the best players in the world, some of the best European players in the world famously hone their craft from a young age on clay,
including Novak.
And that is the knock on Americans, that we don't learn on clay, and therefore, our skills break down.
I thought though, I agree with you about the learning, but I'm talking about the returning, and I guess it's a moot question because here he is on clay, but I think he has more time, and so the opponent, so his variables are more in play on clay, but maybe that helps you more because I think clay is arduous and somewhat demanding also. So I could just be talking, out the side of my head on some of this stuff, and maybe I'm a Californian, so I think of clay as hard courts. It's like what's a true bounce. It's kind of a little bit of an igloo. It's not exactly indoor tennis, but it's almost easier. But your point, you think clay is easier. So
no, I don't think it's easier by any stretch. I think it's a better surface to regain your timing.
Gill?
Put it that way.
I think it probably depends on the player. I do think a match like he found himself against Yuri Vesely, where the rallies are lightning quick 3-shot rallies, and it's a lot about the return of serve, which is probably one of the things that comes back a little bit more slowly than some of the rest of the game. I don't think that's ideal for a player searching for rhythm. I see where Amy's coming from there, but I think clay challenges Novak individually more than hard court and grass. So in that respect, I think it's harder to come back on clay.
It's just a fun thing. It's a fun thing to think through. I think it'll be fun to think through this stuff more as we see players coming back and all that. But yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah, I mean, there have been a couple of good points in here, Amy. I agree that there's plenty of bulletin board material for Novak. Nadal's comeback, Carlos Alcaraz, who's in the quarter. We'll get to that later, I promise. You guys probably want us to talk about that right away, but draw casting always comes last on 3. And finishing points, which I think is the main reason why clay is more challenging for Novak. Right. Roland-Garros, his forehand was incredible. That needs to be the case for him. When he won it last year, of course, is what I'm referring to. He uses the drop shot more, but he has to reach into his bag of tricks a little bit more. There are less backhand down the line winners on clay for not just Novak, but all two-handers. It's just harder to get that shot through the court. So in that respect, I think clay is always more challenging for Novak than the other surfaces.
Right. And I think, though, I think the thing that you pointed about Roland-Garros, obviously that's what he's pointing towards because that's where he's at. That's what his career is about. He's not, Taylor Fritz, who's also in this draw, is maybe architecting things a little differently. It's funny. Each of them could reach the quarters and have different feelings about what that means for their life, their career, their path.
Let's hit on Monte Carlo specifically as an event. Amy, you mentioned he lives there part-time. You're tempted to say that's great. He's probably great there. Amazing. It's his worst clay tournament by win percentage. 74% win percentage lifetime in Monte Carlo. That goes up to 78% in Madrid, all the way up to 86% in Rome. and at the French, it's 84%. So I'd say, Monte Carlo and Madrid are kind of on that lower tier, and then you have Rome and RG, which have been much better for Novak. I think there are a couple reasons for that. I'll keep them to myself. See if you knock off a couple off the board between the two of you. So Joel, why do you think Novak hasn't liked Monte Carlo?
I like this. It's like I was like waiting in my chair. I was wondering which one was going to get called on first. I think first of all, for him, he's often come from a fairly rigorous North American hard court of Indian Wells and Miami. And so that transition is a tricky one for him because he's played a lot of tennis. I think that's a main factor. And also just, again, the ending point factor. He's got to work that much harder. And actually, I like the arc. It's pretty good from a standpoint that the percentage increases as longer matches, Roland-Garros. I mean, the better player usually fares better over the 3 out of 5 format than the 2 out of 3, and you can get kind of ambushed in the 2 out of 3. That's some of the thought. What are your thoughts, Amy?
I think this may be, one of his worst clay court tournaments, because he's typically making that adjustment from hard court to clay, and he's not, the best on clay. But this year he's not doing that because he didn't play hard court. So I know that he practices all the time at the place where Monte Carlo is held. That's his home club, if you will. So if he's had like weeks and weeks to practice, I think that's advantage Novak.
The other factors also, so Novak, you look at his March, he's often been Indian Wells, he's been Miami. I mean, Nadal at times hasn't played Miami, and now this year turned out different because of this injury. But Nadal is getting the jump start on practicing on clay. He's getting even further ahead, putting even more of that distance that's already been between them. And so Novak, I think it's taken him a little while to find his peak tennis on clay. What do you think, Gill? How did we do?
Yeah. So where you started, Joel, with calendar spot, that's one of my factors that I think plays a huge role. Amy, and then, with the adjustment, as far as that's concerned, I think that's everyone. So I don't know that you could say that's why Novak struggles, because that's besides the players who love clay so much that they aren't playing Miami and Indian Wells. I think it's kind of everyone's in the same boat there.
They're not getting to semis and finals.
I know that's true.
But that's not that. I guess my point is that's not Novak this year.
It wasn't him last year either. To be fair, he didn't play Miami, and then he had the surprising Dan Evans loss. But I think so. Calendar spot is one because to me this is a little bit. This isn't time to peak for him physically, and it's a tough summer. You have, don't forget, it's not just Roland-Garros. Wimbledon comes very, very quickly after that. And it's coming off of Australia, coming off the Sunshine Double, where I even feel like that has kind of taken a backseat a little bit when it comes to prioritization. So I just feel like physically, it's a matter of being at 100% for Rome. And that's kind of how I think he looks at it. And it's a couple weeks out. So I don't feel like he's been at his best physically here.
I buy that, and he is the master of sort of energy conservation and knowing, from a macro and a micro, when to put out that all-out effort and when to conserve appropriately. I mean, he always gives 100%, but you do have to manage it. That's
right.
Just
But
the reality.
I think I literally think it's conditioning and fitness more so than kind of how much am I putting in here. How much energy am I putting in? I'm saying if we put him on a treadmill and measured his VO max, I probably butchered that phrase because I'm not a physiotherapist. But I bet he's in much better shape by the end of clay court season than he is coming into Monte Carlo.
Well, that's probably true. And there is the thing about clay court movement and clay court fitness, and who knows on that flight from North America to Europe, who's sneaking in some of the gluten. Whether it's, but yeah, okay. So I think we got a pretty good read on this transition stuff. That's hard for me. And again, Amy said this earlier. Yeah, his worst at a tournament, 35-12. He's won it twice.
Exactly.
I mean, that's
people would kill to get into the finals, like once. So yeah, I mean, we're kind of picking things apart. And just lately, I think with a lot of, prognosticating, and that's not what we're doing here. We're just trying to get a read on where he might be at this moment. But so much of it focuses on things that don't relate to humanity or the human nature or things like that. And, sometimes I think you have to put the stats and the numbers and the calendar spot and the past performance and things like that aside and really just think about where his headspace might be at. And I think it's just going to be a tremendous relief to have some of this COVID-19 stuff out of the way and not really a factor.
I agree with that. I do want to throw in the fact that there is, and I'm going against kind of what you just said, Amy, but there is a clear line here. There's a clear line here. 2015, right? From 2012 to 2015, when we're talking about a prime Novak who's not so concerned about peaking for majors. He can peak the whole time. He can peak the whole year. It didn't matter back then. He was great at Monte Carlo. It was final, win, semifinal, win. And then since then hasn't been past the quarterfinal. So I think there was a line where it starts to become, I'm older. I can't be at 100% throughout the entire calendar.
Well, that goes to what I was saying before about managing your energy and your effort. So is that something you're talking about?
I don't think it's effort though. I think it's how are we scheduling rest and training, and how intense are we training?
Right. I like that. And I think he's going to bring, it's like he's going to bring 100%, but there's only so much of 100% he can bring. But let's also take this into account. And I was looking at it. 2015, he's beating Thomas Berdych in the final. 2019, he's losing to Medvedev in the quarters. Now we got to look at who the competition is. There, it's like, and this will have implications for our discussion of the draw, kind of the upgrade era. I mean, I swear I watched a lot of Miami and Indian Wells, and I thought, Thomas Berdych? Oh yeah, when did he play? I mean, the game, you're seeing these upgrades in speed and spin and shape, and Novak, he can't stand still either. But again, we're going to talk about this constantly. The gravitational impact, or not gravitate. God, I'm a butcher too. Of the impact of the big three on making everybody become a better tennis player. People become better tennis players. So the competition is better. I look at 15. He did beat Nadal in the semis. He beat Berdych. He beat Cilic. Kind of from the flat ball era, huh? The less shaped era, the less topped era. Those guys are pretty flat hitters. He problem solved them.
Little bit, yeah. Look, the game is certainly moving forward, and that's one of the things that's been so remarkable about the big three moving with the game despite their age. I want to throw in one more thing about Monte Carlo before we get to the draw. It's windy. Novak is not like Rafa when it comes to wind, the balance, the footwork. He would much rather the ball not be moving through the air in an unpredictable manner with the way he produces his tennis. So I do think that might be a factor as well.
Right. So it's a mini version. It's kind of like the bookends of the clay court year, of the clay court season. Starts at Monte Carlo, and and Novak's gotten a couple of trophies, and it's been Rafa's universe, like what Roland-Garros has been.
Yes.
I mean,
it just sounds like you guys are pretty bearish on him, or you just want to, keep expectations. And I'm more bullish.
I'm neither.
Sure.
I'm not a stockbroker. I'm not a stockbroker. I'm not just kind of looking at his arc. So I'm not a bear or a bull. I'm neither.
I think he can do great. It wouldn't shock me if he did great. It's more, I think it's more likely that he does great in Madrid and Rome than here, but I think he can still do great. That's in which he will say, because this is, we see these ways of message. Define great. If define great is 2 matches walking out healthy and feeling that he's hitting the ball well, he'll feel fine. He's not gonna.
the only disappointment is going to come if he loses before the quarters in Roland-Garros. I mean, the whole premise of even our show is that Novak could lose in the first round of 3 clay court tournaments, and he's still the defending champ at Roland-Garros, and we don't even know where Rafa's going to be. So it's like,
yeah,
he's building. He's got a bigger view. He can afford to have the biggest view possible of what greatness means in this clay season.
Let's look at some of the guys in his section. He faces the winner of Alejandro Davidovich Fokina and Marcos Giron in round 1. David Goffin got a wild card, and he's actually still playing this week in Marrakesh, Morocco. You have Roberto Bautista Agut against Dan Evans in round 1. Dan Evans is the player who took out Novak in Monte Carlo 2021. Bautista Agut, a famously difficult matchup for Djokovic. And then on the other side, so potential quarterfinals, you have Fritz in there, who's coming from Houston. I actually think that it would surprise me if he brings his best with the travel and everything and how much tennis he's played. You have Tsonga, Cilic, Korda, Van de Zonschkel, and notably Carlos Alcaraz. So let's start with the players in his immediate section, so pre-quarterfinal. Any of those names, Joel, stick out to you? Intrigue?
Not that much. I feel. Oh well, Giron is pretty good, but I don't know. Again, theory, that's fine. I guess that's the X factor of how sharp Novak is. But that could be interesting. There'll be a lot of good rallies in that match.
I think it'll be Davidovich Fokina if I were to choose. Yes.
Okay.
I'm already looking ahead to Robbie Batts, and someone pointed out, although I didn't check this, that someone pointed out that Novak does better against him, or would fare better against him on clay. It's hard court where RBA has really been a headache for him. But I think it's a perfect second round, because he has a first round bye. I think it's a perfect first match for him coming back, either Davidovich Fokina or Giron. That'll be a great warm up. And look ahead to RBA, and that'll be even better because you know that his fitness will be tested.
And I agree. I get the RBA being difficult on hard court, more of an Eastern grip, flatter hitter. So that can cause more difficulties on hard courts where maybe a little less on clay. But again, I guess we'll see then the physical, mental fitness aspect of Novak.
Yeah, RBA will. I'm not even confident he makes it there. Obviously wouldn't stun me, but I would agree that the way, I mean, he's not the same player on clay, never has been. He hits flat as a pancake. He can't find any offense. It's exhausting for him to win points on clay. Whereas, like, you remember the match in Doha, where it's just the damage he can do off the ground. Exactly. is so much more substantial. I think Djokovic got a good little section here. Is kind of the takeaway for me for the most part. However, he has Carlos Alcaraz on the opposite end, who is your Miami champion. Your Indian Wells semifinalist pushed Nadal to 3 sets in a very thrilling semifinal. The talk of the tour at the moment. So the draw fortune would certainly end there. And you know what? Looking at who Carlos Alcaraz has in his section of the draw, I do think we're going to get this in the quarterfinal. Amy?
Yeah. Go on, Amy.
Go ahead.
Yeah. Watching Alcaraz drop shot the way that he did in Miami with the efficiency, this surface seems to be made for him, especially if he has the success that he has had the last couple of months. And Novak also likes to drop shot. So I think that would be, a blockbuster and a really fun match. I think if I had to like play it out or scenario it in my head, I think Carlos will be having a lot of confidence coming into this. And he doesn't seem like the type of guy that's on social media a lot, despite the fact that he's 18 years old. He seems grounded in that way. So the huge hype surrounding him, I think it would be less likely that he would be affected by that than some other players. That being said, when he does face Novak, that's going to be, if that happens, that's going to be a huge test for this young player.
Well, it's such an exciting thing to ponder. I mean, Alcaraz is clearly the it boy of 2022. And then the question is how, I mean, he sure seems indestructible. Sure seems he's incredible, seems fit, has all these different tools. So now we'll see. Now he's arriving. You know, he's made that transition from the hunter to the hunted, and how good he is, and what's, you know, a little uncertainty. And the thing I care most of all about Alcaraz is his staying healthy. And hopefully he took off a nice little time last week. So that said, as a matchup, oh my God, it's a block. It is a total blockbuster. It's generational. The guy who's got all these tools, the guy who did kind of what Novak did in 2007 when Novak was a teenager and got to the finals at Indian Wells and then won Miami. So it's kind of this bursting upon the scene. And where's Novak going to be? Novak wants to say, okay, son, I'm the boss.
How about Nadal in 2005 makes the final of Miami, loses the 5-setter to Federer, wins Monte Carlo for his first Masters 1000. So something about this time of year, maybe. I would say surface-wise, this is definitely Alcaraz's best chance right now. And it's not that I think Carlos is some kind of clay courter. I think he's going to be really good on all surfaces. But the return, the Alcaraz serve versus the Djokovic return, that is the biggest mismatch, I think, head-to-head. Meaning the way Alcaraz serves, not really hitting spots, serving hard, not going to affect the Djokovic return very much at all. I remember I broke down one of the big points in the final against Ruud, and Alcaraz hit a first serve on a huge point, I think 30-all at 6-5, serving in the first set. Out wide, completely missed his spot. It went right to the Ruud forehand, and Ruud chipped it into the middle of the court. All I could think of is if that were Novak Djokovic, that return would have been obliterated at Carlos's feet or cross court. I mean, the point would have been turned around off the return. On clay, when Alcaraz can just kind of, I think we'll see a lot of kick serves, and that serve return dynamic is going to be less pronounced, and there's going to be more rallies. That's Carlos's best chance. So not only would this be an intriguing test for Djokovic, but this is the surface that I think would be the most challenging for Djokovic right now against Alcaraz.
Because you think that Alcaraz's serve will not be as hindered on clay because Novak's return, as potent as it is kind of diffused by the clay. So what's he going to do? He's not going to torch a forehand. He's going to take that serve and hit it probably somewhere deep middle to B or C. And the question that he's going to figure out though is, where do I get a hold of this Alcaraz guy? I'll tell you a match I'd almost like to see. I mean, Novak Alcaraz is incredibly. I'd like to see Alcaraz Medvedev. You see what I'm getting at? Sort of like a little more of the contender battle. And Novak is the champ guy and the reigning this. You know, we can see all these classic scenarios of Alcaraz, you know, winning the match 7-5, 6-2, and taking down the king. But I don't know. Or Novak, I'm the boss. 4-4. Thank you very much.
Let me just quickly clarify something technically. It's not just that Djokovic's return is less potent. It's that both players are just going to make returns. Right. They're both going to make returns on a surface this slow, this specific clay. This isn't even Madrid where servers have, some success. So that takes away the mismatch of the serve return that I think Novak would own on most surfaces very handedly. On this surface, it's going to just be returns in play, both sides.
So your serve is less vulnerable on clay.
Yeah.
That's your point that you're making. It's not the serve return. I mean, it's nothing to do with Novak's serve. It just has to do with the potency. But it is the potency of Novak's return. It's like It's clay. It's gonna be clay. He's not gonna put him on his heels the way you think he would on hard courts.
Yeah.
So we'll see.
I see Novak running him, opening up the court, running him side to side like he does other people, and Carlos really handling that vexingly well, and Novak having to really reach deep into his bag to figure out a way to strategize to beat the guy. And the other thing is Carlos gives you looks that other players don't, like the serve and volley. I can see this being, a really tough 3-set match if it comes to this. By the way, you guys, just to step it back to RBA for a second, I looked up Novak's head-to-head with RBA, and I wanted to look at the surfaces. And the reason that I and some other people had it in their head that they play some very close matches on clay, because Novak has notably played RBA at Roland-Garros, and it was both times were very long, tough 4-set matches that Novak did win, but it wasn't easy. So even on clay, RBA is not an easy out.
That's interesting. Well, when was the most recent?
2019. I just closed it out. I'm sorry.
No, that's
see
okay.
if I can.
That's all right.
Yeah,
No, I'm sorry, 2018. 2018, and the score was 6-4, 6-7, 7-6, 6-2. And then in 2017, they played at Rome, and Novak got him 6-4, 6-4.
So they played in 2018 at Roland-Garros, and Novak. That was the year Novak lost. That was the year he lost to Cecchinato.
Yeah.
Right. Mm-hmm. And no, that was Novak at some of his bottom. I'm not dismissing RBA. that was a tough time for Novak.
And then 2016 at Roland-Garros, they played, and Novak won, but it was 3-6, 6-4, 6-1, 7-5.
That was a good year for Novak at Roland-Garros.
Yeah. So RBA he's an incredible player. That's an underrated, fabulous player on any surface, and nobody wants to play him.
Right. And these guys, though, RBA, he's excellent. He's great. Magical is Alcaraz. Alcaraz in the last month, he wants to be he wants to be in our show. He wants to be in the title of our show, Alcaraz. I mean, he's that type of supernova, like I wrote about, supernova. He's got the magic. I mean, it's not even anointed. He doesn't need to be anointed. He's just here. So that's what makes this potential matchup with Novak so intriguing.
RBA asks you to create the magic. That's what you need to beat him, and he always asks that question.
You think he needs to create magic, or just better grittiness?
No, I think he's a machine. He's a ball machine, Joe.
Oh no, he's fantastic. I just think that certain players, I think the history of the sport is filled with players who are like incredible craftsmen, like Hurkacz. That guy's excellent. That guy's incredible. And then we see the players who are like, who then they have the magic. That's the three in our show. That's what we think Alcaraz could be. Someone who's like a super genius.
Agreed. All right. Friday, I'm going to make a call, and this is not official. I'm going to say Friday we have a show probably regardless of what happens, because if there is a quarterfinal meeting between Alcaraz and Djokovic, that would be the day of the match. So let's see what happens. Novak returns for a second time in 2022, but this one feels a little bit more significant in Monte Carlo as we begin clay season with, unfortunately, Nadal sidelined. It goes back to being the Novak show. Feels like we have had one of them at all times, but rarely more. That'll do it for this episode of 3. We are available on all podcast platforms. Big help if you leave a rating and a review on Apple and Spotify. And if you're watching on YouTube, like, comment, and subscribe. We will see you next time on the next episode of 3.